Hey everyone, today we are joined by a longtime veteran of the independent wrestling scene, a member of Ring of Honor during the company's early years, who's also appeared for Full Impact Pro, TNA Wrestling, WWE, and perhaps most notably, Billy Corgan's National Wrestling Alliance. He's your pal, he's my pal, Sal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be here. This is what round three, round
Round
four,
four, round
round
four.
four.
Unbelievable.
Man, time flies.
I just right off the bat, I've said it to you. I say it in multiple interviews. I always put you over and praise you because you were the very first person to give the channel a chance. And we've had a lot of great guests since then. But the fact that you were the first one to do it when I was completely unproven, and the fact that you're willing to come back, it means the world. People love to hear from you. You're a great storyteller. So thank you so much for your kindness and generosity.
It's always my pleasure, and I see the people. When I click on the apps, because I'm old and I say things like click on the apps. But I see, I've said Caprice and Brian Kendrick and I mean, you know better than me, but I keep seeing these names pop up. I'm like, man, that's super cool. So it's awesome to be a part of your journey from day one. So it's really cool, and it's always my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I always say it wouldn't be happening without you. We just had Alexander Wolf from WWE on. We had Jack
Yes.
Stars. I think this will be out then. Hopefully, we'll have Lufisto and Rodney Mack in the coming weeks. So,
Oh, when you get Rodney Mack, please send him my best. He's one of my he's the most intimidating teddy bears I've ever seen in my life.
that is great line. I might throw it out there. I might be a little too intimidated to throw it out there. We'll see. We'll see.
Yes. He's the best. Oh, I love uh he's one of those guys that when I see him backstage, I'm just like I especially like when he's getting ready for a match and he's in the zone, I'm just like, oh my God, what fool would walk down a dark alley with him? And then, like I'll, acknowledge his existence. And he's always like, oh, Sal, good to see you. I'm like, oh, life is weird, man. Life doesn't make any sense.
I love it. I love it. And what's fun is tomorrow, a little peek behind the curtain. I don't know when people will see this, but tomorrow we're going to have Johnny Yuma on for the third time. So he was just about to tie your record. We were supposed to do it
Tremendous.
last Wednesday, but he had to reschedule. So he was going to tie you, but now right the night before, you just one upped him.
Not on my watch. Not on my watch.
All right. So as usual, I love to start it and end it with plugs. Where can people check you out? Where they can show some support to you? You don't have to support them. That's okay.
Yeah, I support you guys too. It's a give and take thing. ProWrestlingTees.com/Sal Rinauro. I think I've got 5 shirts up there. I've got this brand new shirt through angrylemonade.net. It's a DMX tribute piece that I'm really excited about. It's hot off the presses.
Love it.
Uh, you can always visit me at the merchandise stands at any event I'm at. I've got all sorts of trinkets and things of that nature that I'm more than happy to part with. You can find me on Instagram at Sal_Rinauro, on Twitter at Sal Rinauro, and I think that's everything. Man, I'm
And the
getting hit in the
NWA.
head.
And the
Oh yes,
NWA.
absolutely. At the NWA, we've got I might be dropping news that isn't released yet, but we've got the Sam Wayne. I can't say it.
I
It's
can't
very
pronounce it either. I'm terrified to
Sa,
do it.
Saw Wayne, I believe. Saw Win is what it was. There it is. Saw Win pay-per-view, October 28th in Cleveland, and then we've got 2 TV tapings, November 4th in Nashville and November 18th in Sarasota, Florida, home of the Macho Man Randy Savage. So please come visit me at any of those.
And that's perfect because just to throw back to an old interview, you talked about Macho Man being one of the people who inspired you. So it's,
Yes,
again, that link. That's one thing I love about the channels. A lot of times it's hard for people to sit back and appreciate the links of their past, and how it's come full circle. So I always appreciate that we can, even if it's just for a minute, look at that and be like, wow, that's pretty cool.
absolutely. And that's the only when I got the message, because I literally just got the message today. Are you available? from my buddy Kyle Davis, who is also
A channel, yeah.
yes, appeared on the channel. Dear friend of mine, when he asked me the date, and I said, Kyle, stop asking. Just tell me where I need to be, and I'll be there. And he was like, okay, Sarasota. And the first thing that came to my head was like, okay, what macho gear do I do? And so now, like, there's all sorts of pressure on me. Like, I got one shot. What am I gonna do?
Fantastic. For a second there, I thought you were going to start going to Eminem, Lose Yourself. You know,
Yeah,
you have one
yes,
shot,
no,
one opportunity.
yes. I might bring mom spaghetti to the ring. Who knows? The options are endless.
But seriously, guys, please follow him on Instagram, on Twitter. Show some support, buy a T-shirt, and show some support at the shows too. You definitely appreciate him offering his time to us, and he's telling all these great stories that are entertaining. So show that support right back.
Absolutely, please.
Okay, so
I'd love to visit with the fans.
This is lovely because, as you know, we have a habit on this show of talking about one thing and then just going off on 16 tangents. We've gotten to, I think, 2006, maybe 2007, and that's skipping a lot.
Yes.
So I had the bright idea of, let me ask people if they have any questions for you on top of my endless supply of questions, just to add even more fuel to the fire.
Bring them on. Let's go.
All right, so we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I think we have I'm just gonna throw like 4 or 5 questions out there, get those going, and then I'll get to everything I have, and we'll start from there. So,
who knew I was this over?
Oh, you are very popular, sir. Because some of these I've even picked up from, like, even before I said I was going to interview you again, people are like, "Oh, when you interview Sal again, ask him this." And I'm like, "Well, first of all, Sal has to be nice enough to do it."
No, it's written in my contract now. At least one a year.
Okay, so Akira Tozawa asked, and I don't think it's the real one, have you ever wrestled in Japan?
No, and that is beyond bucket list thing for me. I'm really hoping. I actually just started. Well, to rewind it a little bit, I was supposed to go in 06. I believe it was 06. In 05, Dragon Gate had a dojo class of Ring of Honor guys, and I just missed. I was like the second to last guy that Gabe had recommended for it, and they cut the list off before I was on it. So I was going to be a part of the second dojo class, and I was so excited because it was like, I think it was 3 months over there in the Dragon Gate dojo, and I was just, at that time, the Florida brothers were there, and they were my all-time, like, if you haven't seen the Florida brothers in action, they're the most originally hilarious team I've ever seen in my life. I mean, just my all-time favorite Florida brothers spot is they're teaming with what's her name? Akira Hokuto, who's Kensuke Sasaki's wife, right? And they're wrestling against Kensuke Sasaki. Well, they're doing a spot where they're doing, I forget how it happened, but they're doing face washes to her. And Kensuke Sasaki comes in and bumps them both off. And the referee goes off with the Florida brothers. And Kensuke Sasaki kind of stops and then starts giving his wife face washes when nobody's looking. And so, like, I was all about this. And unfortunately, they decided not to do the second class. But definitely a bucket list thing. So if there's any promoters out there that have Japanese connections, please, I'd love to do it. I have a passport ready to go.
So just as a refresher, that is the ECWA Super A Cup or Super Juniors and Japan that you want to get to.
Yes.
The Super 8 and Japan. And honestly,
Super 8 Japan.
I really hope both of those come true because, when I read that, I wasn't sure if you had or not. I was like, I know it's not in my notes, but, the notes don't cover everything. I'll miss stuff, but.
Yeah, no, there's been that carrot's been dangled in front of me a couple times, but the Dragon Gate thing was the closest, and it hasn't hit yet, and hopefully soon. Hopefully, I'm hoping to do. I did Mexico this year, so hopefully Japan's next.
If you go over, because back then you wanted to do the whole dojo experience, but it's been another
Yes.
15 years since then. Is that something at
Yes.
this point in your life you would still want to do, or is it something where you're like, I'd rather just do the tour
I
or the
can
bookings?
I'd consider it still. Just I don't think I could do 3 months just because I've got kids, but man, it still would be a hard thing to pass. And just to embrace myself completely in the culture is something I'm incredibly interested in. So I would never say never. I'd have to see all the details to it, but man, yes. I mean, I'd be incredibly interested in any form or fashion going over there just to put, knock it off the bucket list.
Super cool. All right. Now I'm probably going to butcher some names here. I'm not great at pronouncing random names that I see online. So Martial Santana asks, this is an interesting one. Would you rather take the craziest bumps but no more chops, or the hardest chops but no more bumps for the rest of your career?
Well, seeing as how I've done both already, uh, I coming up in when I did, chops were all the rage. And Roderick Strong's got the heaviest hands any human has ever possessed. I mean, it's just his chops are stupid. And I've seen, like the Gunthers and the likes, but man, those Roddy chops were next level. Hit you in the chest and you could feel them in your vertebrae. Uh, and because of my size, I'm a bump taker. I take dumb bumps. Uh, just just at this last set of TV tapings, I wrestled Judas, and I had him give me a choke slam on the apron. And when I called it, like he questioned it. He's like, "You sure?" I was like, "Ah, as long as we do it to the hard cam, I'm absolutely sure." If we're doing it where nobody picks it up, this is a horrible idea.
That's where the genius lies. As long as the camera catches it, it's good.
Absolutely, right? The pain is temporary. The TV lasts a lot longer. Uh, if I had to pick one, I'd probably just take the bumps because fortunately, I can layer it where I take one stupid bump and I can hide in a corner for a little bit and breathe. Uh, those chops, man. So, especially when it's quantity over quality, man. That so I'm wrestling. I'm pretty sure it was Roddy. It had to have been Roddy. We do a match, and he probably hit me with at minimum 500 chops. I mean, just completely blistered up my chest and cut it all up. Well, at the time, I was also working at a cheerleading camp called, and it was the Cheetah All Stars in North Georgia. So, I mean, I wouldn't say little known fact, but what I didn't put two and two in my brain either. But the most famous strip club in Atlanta, or one of the most famous strip clubs in Atlanta, is called the Cheetah. So one day I go to my tanning bed, and this is right after this match with Roddy, where my whole chest is just blistered and cut and bruised. And I go to my tanning bed and I ask the lady behind the desk, I go, "Hey, should I tan in this condition?" And I kind of, just pull down my shirt and let her see some of it. And she was like, how did you get those? And I was like, "Oh, through wrestling." And she was like, "Oh, I just saw the cheetah on your shirt." And I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no. No. When I strip, I don't get hit, man. That's off limits."
Fantastic.
But yeah, so I would probably go with just taking one big dumb bump and not having to get chopped, and then rinse, wash, repeat tomorrow.
And I guess from a career perspective, it probably makes more sense because, as you mentioned, bumps is kind of your thing, smaller guys. So eliminating that from your repertoire would probably be detriment.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, not to my walking ability, but
Yeah, who needs it?
yeah, come on, overrated, right? Lieutenant Dan didn't walk; he did okay for himself.
I did not expect a Lieutenant Dan reference, but
There it is.
thank you so
There
much for
it
that.
is.
All right, Moody on YouTube asks, which past or present wrestlers would make up your Mount Rushmore for wrestling? Now, these are always really tough, near impossible.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you have to limit it to a specific category or an era, but if you had to pick one, you can limit it to whatever you want, whatever your qualifications are. Just throw us one out.
Yeah, so my son loves to do these things with me. You know, he's real big on like, give me your top five, give me your top 10. And it's almost impossible for me. Savage, Sean are in any list. Shawn Michaels, Randy Savage. But then nailing, coming down with two more is um it's so tough because yeah, there's just so many people that like have influenced me or that I'm just a fan of. Uh, I, Macho Man, Shawn Michaels, probably Brian Danielson. I mean, he's just. I'm pretty sure I've said it on this channel before, and I'll say it till the day I die. I think Brian's the best pro wrestler of his generation. And that's not a slight on, a lot of these guys that are on that list are friends of mine. Um, and I mean, you could say AJ, you could say Seth Rollins, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And I love all those guys. And being number two, remind me of being number two later. I got a story about that, but I digress.
Adding that right to
Uh,
the notes.
Yes. But being number two to Brian Danielson is no slight on anybody, right? Like,
Mhm.
if so, I put Brian, and then I mean, it's probably Ahmed Johnson. That's that's probably
Yes.
round out my Mount Rushmore. Yeah, Shawn Michaels, Randy Savage, Brian Danielson, and Ahmed Johnson. I mean, which I'm pretty sure is just the most common Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling.
I mean, could you be more generic? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty.
That's fantastic. I love the Abed Johnson story you told in our last video. Guys, check that out if you haven't. I probably won't remember to link it, but you'll find it on the channel. If you look up
Hey,
Ahmed Johnson, you'll see Sal's face.
hey, you should look up Ahmed Johnson every day, anyways, just because he's the man.
All right, one more question from the batch of the viewers. Moody again on YouTube asks, if you're able to call or commentate a wrestling match, any one in history or one that hasn't happened yet, which would you choose? That's really interesting.
Oh, it'd have to be one I haven't seen yet, which is covering a lot of ground. Uh, I mean, I've done commentary even as a kid, when I would buy the Coliseum home videos or rent them or whatever, after I'd watch it the first time, I would mute it and I would do my own play by play because I'm just a nerd and those are the things I do. And, I've been fortunate enough to do commentary on independent shows as well as I did some when I broke my arm at NWA. I was able to do commentary which is something I really enjoy and wouldn't mind getting back into in the future. But as for now, what match would I like to do commentary on? It would have to be something that went a little longer, but with a little pizzazz to it. So I'm going to say I would like to do commentary. Maybe it would probably be a fatal four way
Okay.
with Brian Danielson, Shawn Michaels, Ahmed Johnson and Sal Rinauro. I think would just be that would be the match I would want to do commentary on.
For your own
Uh,
match.
yes, just on my own match, Jerry Lawler style. Just give me the mic. Let me. Some of my favorite conversations I've ever had have been in the ring, anyways. So why not share it with the world? Come on, guys, let's go for a ride. We'll have a great time. You'll get to hear Brian bully me, which Brian Danielson is low key the biggest bully in the history of pro wrestling. Don't let that nice guy persona fool you. He's made me paranoid about the size of my calves for almost 2 decades now.
I hope you know you just gave us like the thumbnail, the words on the thumbnail right there. Brian Danielson's the
There you
biggest bully
go.
in the world.
There you go. It's the truth. It's the truth. Don't let that nice beard and hair fool you.
You know,
He's
it's
a
funny.
bully.
I think of all people, I think it was like Ryback or someone like that said that same thing once in an interview. And here's this giant man. He's like, or no, it was Big Show. It was Big Show who said it. And here's the biggest man in the world, basically.
Yes.
He's like, Brian Danielson's a bully.
He's a bully, man. I love him to death, but he's a bully. And I'll tell him that to his face. I mean, from a far distance, but still.
Fantastic. You said you brought up being number 2. Is there a story with that?
Well, so just not necessarily to Brian, but just recently, and I'm pretty sure we'll circle back to this later. After the second night of the NWA 75th pay-per-view, I was downstairs waiting for my Uber Eats, and Billy Trask, who's the director for the NWA show, who, if you don't know, I'm now also doing backstage agenting and producing for the NWA.
Definitely going to dive into that after.
Which involves me sitting in the truck during the matches that I'm in charge of. So we were downstairs. I was waiting on my Uber Eats, and Billy just happened to be out there, and we got to talking about life and just things. And I said, well, he goes, how are you liking the job? And I was like, oh, I personally love it, but my opinion is kind of irrelevant. How do you guys think we're doing? How do you guys think I'm doing? And Trask goes, man, I'm going to be honest with you. You're probably already our number 2 agent behind Dr. Tom. And I don't mean that as an insult. And I was like, number 2 to Dr. Tom? I'd let Dr. Tom take a number 2 on me. What are you talking like? That's amazing. Like that's the highest form of flattery I can imagine. He's the guy that trained Ahmed Johnson. Like,
oh my
it doesn't get better.
So much of that was incredible. Again, you gave us a great thumbnail opportunity, so thank you for that. But your Dr. Tom stories are always great, by the way, I have to say.
Dr. Tom, he's amazing. It's like, and the thing is so like again, and we'll circle back to all of this, but the first episode of Power that aired, they're calling it the New Era, that aired I guess not today, but a week ago today. When you look at the credits under producers, it's my name and then Dr. Tom's. And my buddy screenshot it and sent it to me, and I was just like, that's not how life works. Like, that's what is happening. Like, this is the Doctor of Desire. Like, what? Why am I? This is not how it works. I'm not his peer. And but he's just the best, and he's taken me in with open arms, and he helps me a lot. And I can't say enough pleasant things about Dr. Tom.
He's another guy who I've been in communication with him a little bit. Hopefully we'll have him on the channel one day. That's a major goal of mine, because I mean, he's Dr. Tom. Why wouldn't it be, right?
Yes.
I just want to draw attention to the fact that some of the people he either trains from scratch or has had a hand in the NWA who have gone on to, in the last couple of years, like, he's provided some excellent talent to the company.
I mean, he's just, he's so good at what he does. And I'm so glad that I've got to spend any of the time I have with him. And he's he's so giving, and he's got so much knowledge about pro wrestling, either firsthand or just, I mean, he was like me. He grew up as a fan and found his way into it as a young age and just rode the train. And he's the best. I have nothing but the highest compliments for Dr. Tom Pritchard.
And he's so interesting to listen to. And, that's the one thing I keep thinking about is what a entertaining couple of brothers between him and Bruce, where you can just listen to the two talk like individually. I can't even imagine them together talking, because that would just be mind blown. But
this was a few years ago. I was booked as an extra in Knoxville, and I was just sitting in catering, and I looked up to my left, and there was Tom, who was just visiting, but Tom and Bruce were sitting there talking, and I was like, trying to scoot over, see what I can, please just let me hear you two talk about it. I want to hear your guys' grocery list, right? Like, what's your procedures for washing clothes? I'm all in. Just start talking. You've got me.
Incredible. Well, since you brought it up, let's just jump right to it. You have a new role in the NWA besides just being an on-screen performer, and I'd love to hear how it came about, how you're adjusting to it. Obviously, we know what people think of your job so far, but
yeah. So I'll always credit Kyle Davis. Probably a year and a half ago, he was like, Sal, I know you don't want to hear this, but you've got a great mind for pro wrestling. And I was like, why wouldn't I want to hear that?
Yeah.
That's a dumb thing. You say dumb words, Kyle Davis. I thought you were intelligent.
Please keep saying
it. Yes. He goes, no, let me finish. And I was like, no, I don't want to let you finish. I take my compliments and I run away. He goes, I think your future is going to be behind the camera, and I think you're going to help make a lot of people better than they are, and I think that's really where you're going to make your impact in pro wrestling. I said, yeah, you're right. I don't want to hear you speak ever again. Just shut up. But he pushed for it. He kept pushing for it, and I'm awful at politics. I'm just the worst at politics, and we'll get into that here in this story. But so I would never bring it up around the people that needed to hear that I would even be lightweight interested in agenting. Well, fast forward to Crockett Cup this year, and night one, we did a 4-man scramble, or a 4-team scramble match, where I was in the ring with Talos, who's a legit 7-foot tall, dresses like a lumberjack, just super
Massive.
Scary. Yeah, just a big dude. And the spot is, I give him a super kick, no sell it. He lunges at me. I duck again. Give him a second super kick. This time he bounces off the ropes. When he comes back, Gaagz and I double super kick him, and he spills over the top. And in the back, he goes, do you think you can get your leg up high enough? So I kind of show him, and he was like, oh, that'll be fine. So we're out there, blah, 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 blah. First one, boom, and you can hear the crowd, ooh. And then he comes at me again, boom, and the crowd comes up more, and I'm like, yeah. And it's the third one, and I've got Gaagz to help protect me, but I'm shooting for the stars. And as soon as I throw the kick, I overextended, and my left hamstring tore.
Oh.
And of course, as my left hamstring's tearing, Talos' ankle is rolling. So I'm on the ground grabbing my hamstring. He's on the ground grabbing his ankle, and we're both looking at each other like, what now? So we finished up the match. I crawled to the back, and I'm like, yeah, I tore my hamstring. And the EMT's checking on me or whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what the next play is. And Billy Corgan comes and checks on me. He's like, well, how you feeling? I was like, well, I mean, if Zach Gowen could have, he's doing moonsaults with one leg. I've got the leg. I just can't use it. I'll be fine. And he's like, no. No, just rest it. You'll be fine. Well, while we're having this conversation, Kyle comes up and he goes, well, you don't need two legs to agent. And, Billy kind of like, is that something you'd be interested in? I was like, oh yeah, actually, that's something I'm very interested in. He goes, okay, well, that's good information to know. Well, the next day was night 2 of the tapings, and clearly I'm not cleared to wrestle or do anything, even though I did talk them into letting me hobble to the ring with Gaagz.
What is the recovery time for something like that? I'm not even sure.
About 8 to 10 weeks.
Oh wow, okay.
So I tore the hamstring in, I think it was the last week of June, and my first match back was at NWA 75.
It's pretty cool.
Which is the end of August. So it was right at 10 weeks, which I was cleared beforehand, but I just said, no, it's not worth it. I'll just rest it. But coming out of the pay-per-view, coming out of the Crockett Cup, Pat Kenny, who's the head of talent, called just to check in, and I kind of reinforced to him. I said, well, Pat, I'm healthy. I'm going to get better. But just forecasting into the future, I'd actually be very interested in doing, any kind of producing if that spot's available. I know it's very packed right now in the producer's room, so no rush. I just wanted to let you know that there was an interest on my end. And he said, again, that's very valuable information to have. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. So I don't think anything of it. Well, fast forward maybe a week, and Pat calls and he goes, hey, are you still interested? And I was like, Pat, it's been a week.
What could have changed?
Like, yeah, I think I'm still in the same place I am. He goes, good. We decided we're going to give you a shot. Where we want to bring you up to Chicago, and just kind of get a feel for it. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And so we get to Chicago, and in my brain, I'm like, okay, I got to dress for the part I want, not the part I have. So I dress. I'm clean. I'm not clean shaven, but I've trimmed my beard some, and I've got like a dress shirt on, with long sleeves.
Wow.
I've got slacks on, and I'm fancy pants Magoo. And I walk into the agent's room, and Pat goes, who are you? I was like, okay, Pat, I've known you a billion years. And he goes, no, I've known Sal. I've never known Salvatore. I was like, all right. Gotcha. So I'm thinking, I'm probably going to get a couple dark matches, maybe an undercard throwaway match. I think I had 6 matches my first night, all TV matches, all with like stakes and stuff. So they threw me right into the fire. And Pat told me that night, he goes, I didn't want to, I legitimately wanted to test you. I wanted to see if we had something here or not. And he goes, I was very impressed. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then the next day he called me and he goes, we discussed it. And starting in St. Louis at NWA 75, you're going to just be, he goes, you're now player coach. You're going to be full-time producer.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where like I was sitting in the meeting. I mean, it's the 75th anniversary of the NWA at the Chase. Like, I'm sitting next to Velvet Sky. I'm across the table from Homicide. Dr. Tom's to my right. Jazz is in there. Rodney Mack's in there. Just all these names of people that like I looked up to as a child, and now like I'm legitimately one of their peers. Really and cool. It's nuts, man. And like nobody has even kind of given me a side eye. It's been very helpful. It's they've come to me with questions. It's insane to me that like they welcomed me with open arms, and they, like they all want to see me succeed. And it's crazy, right? Like it's crazy to sit in a room where Billy Corgan reads off a match, blah 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 versus blah blah blah. Throws it to Simon Diamond to find out who the agent is. Simon Diamond says my name. Billy Corgan turns to me to tell me what he wants. And all these luminaries from my life, from my childhood, from
Like
are just
fantasy
like,
land.
yeah, like, oh, Sal's got it. I'm just like, what is happening right now? Like, does nobody else think this is insane? Because this isn't supposed to happen.
It's true, but it's, if you think about it, and I don't mean to throw a dagger at you. This one might sting a little bit. You've been doing this for about 25 years now. So
Yes,
you have
yes.
quite a bit of experience behind you. I know, like, there's that inner fan of you that's like, this is amazing. I don't belong here. But then it's like, well, you've done a lot.
Well, and that's the thing is like, and God bless him, Pat's put me in position where like a lot of the matches I've got to work with the younger kids who, as gross and vomit inducing as this sounds, grew up watching me, which is, yeah. But like, so like, there's that level of respect. Like they look at me like I look at a Dr. Tom, right? And that's, there's still like a malfunction in my head because that doesn't make sense to me. But like and it's funny just because like this is something I've been doing for free forever. Don't tell Billy Corgan. I've
We'll
been
edit
doing
that
this
part
for
right out.
yeah. I've been doing this forever, helping people have always, I mean, and I think it's just because I grew up and I'm such a fan, and people have turned to me for a long time for ideas. Hey, I got an idea. How can we get from A to B seamlessly? Or, what do you think about this? And, I'll throw in my 2 cents. And sometimes my 2 cents doesn't hit. And sometimes, my 2 cents, oh, wow, I never even thought about it that way. And it works perfectly. But I've been, like I said, I've been doing that just because I love pro wrestling. And I want to see people that love pro wrestling succeed. Right. So, like, it's not like, let me tell you how to do it, kid. It's, hey, you're interested in being good. I'm interested in good pro wrestling.
Perfect. Perfect marriage.
Let's make that happen, right? Yeah, like I know I'm a super deep thinker. But yeah, I've been studying pro wrestling my whole life, whether I've been intentionally studying it or not, right? Like I've watched it and I've watched it again and I've watched it again. And like, I knew how to collar and elbow tie up before I ever stepped foot in a wrestling ring because I'd seen 800,000 collar and elbow tie ups. I knew how to reverse a hammerlock before I got into a wrestling ring because I'd seen 800,000 hammerlock reversals in my life. And it's not like it's a lot of osmosis, really. Just, I mean, I've seen it so many times that I just kind of knew. And fortunately, I've been able to communicate my knowledge to other people to help them get to those places. And it's wild, man. Watching some of these matches that I produce has brought me almost as much pride, if not more, than just having a good match myself. Right? When it's guys that I know that really want it and they're missing one piece, or they, that there's a gear that they didn't know how to find, and I help pull it out of them. Like, man, like I'm helping other people make art, and that's wild. Like it's such a proud papa moment. And it gives me, life after death, once my body gives out, which is going to be any moment now, might be in this interview, who knows?
We'll definitely keep the camera on because I feel like that's
yes,
going to get some
yes,
views.
yes. TMZ immediately. But I still have something to do in this business. I can still give to pro wrestling, and that's awesome. That's
I'm glad you
so
brought that
awesome
up
to me.
because that's something I kept thinking, when you were talking about when Kyle brought it up. And, maybe was it something that you had previously been thinking about? Maybe not even with the NWA, but in general, have you ever, like, before this year, were you thinking of, I don't want to call it an exit plan, but an life after wrestling plan for how you would stay involved if you wanted to stay involved? Have you thought about, like, wrestling school? Have you thought about, because I'm sure you've at least thought about it, but
Yeah,
serious
well, so
consideration.
I've definitely considered wrestling schools. Putting together a school before, and that's still an idea that I'm toying with. I've got a plan that I'm very slowly putting together for that. But there's just so many schools right now that it's not like something I have to do. And like the thought of being an agent it had been presented to me before, but I just never put any credence into it until Kyle kind of started bashing me over the skull with it. I said, man, maybe there's something there. And it's really through like I was talking about before, the work that I was doing at NWA before they had me as an agent, where particular talents would come find me, before their matches, or just when they were trying to come up with character stuff or promo stuff, and they'd ask me my opinion, and I'd well, what if you try this, and maybe if you do this, or just whatever, and once I realized, like, oh, I've already been doing this, and I enjoy it. The thing is, I love when I can get together with talented, creative people, and we can come up with something that's unique, and then they can go out and do it, because then I don't have to go out and do it.
That's true. You don't have to take the bumps. You can just
I can watch.
tell the story.
I'm really, really good at watching people fall down. I'm really good at it. Especially when they're falling down in a manner that I came up with. Like, hey, way to go, Chief. Uh, but yeah, it wasn't anything I had put a lot of thought into until really until it was presented to me. But now it's like it's almost like when I go to these NWA shows, my matches are afterthoughts, which is it's not a slight. It's just like I get so excited about getting to help other talent grow. And I'm so blessed that like this is everybody. Like I said, everybody seems to like my job. Everybody's really really pleased with the job I'm doing, and I'm just going to keep on trying to grow. Like again, the Chicago Loop, the agents for it were me, Dr. Tom, and Homicide. Like that sounds like a bad bar joke, right? Like
Wrestling
Dr.
version of
Tom,
The Hangover.
yes, right? Dr. Tom, Sal Rinauro, and Homicide walk into a bar. Like, what?
I'd
None
want
of
to
it
see
makes
that, to be
sense.
honest.
Yes, like foolishness. Uh, and like it's been so cool. And then like getting to sit in the truck during the matches and watch as they're calling, camera 4, get ready on your shot. And I'm in the director's ear, like, hey, get camera 5 ready because they're getting ready to go here, or whatever, right? Or like, oh, if you get the boom mic here, or if you get the jib on this shot. And it's just a whole fascinating part of the business that like I was aware existed, but I never put a lot of thought into all the work that goes into it until I was into it. And it's incredible. It's really, really cool.
You brought up something that I think was interesting, and I actually was talking to Jack Stars about this too. Jack Sells from now, and
Yeah.
again, guys, I don't know when the clips will come out, so that one might be out before or after this one does, but you guys will see it when you see it. But one thing I asked him was, he was talking about how he got to train with William Regal, Johnny Saint, Robbie
Yes.
Brookside, with NXT UK and all this. And what I brought up to him was, these are people he grew up watching, right, from the scene. And NXT UK had a TV deal. So
Yep.
in some ways, Jack and, his fellow roster members are going to be those people for the next generation and even for some
Yep.
people on the indie scene. And so what I asked him was, if there's a young guy in the locker room, because wrestling's funny, there's always the fear of getting heat. You don't want to talk too much. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to approach the wrong person. So I asked him, like, are you somebody who you welcome people coming to you and asking advice and asking for help? And he gave his answer, of course. And I'm curious for you, because you talked about it as a producer role, like that's kind of your job now. But beyond that, like
Yes.
if you're on an indie show, let's say in Georgia, not NWA, not your official gig, you're just doing a shot. And there's a young guy, heard of you, obviously, never spoke to you besides saying hello. If he comes to you asking for advice, is that something you welcome, or is it, you need
100,
time?
100%. I'm a big believer in the phrase, you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
in this business, there's a lot of ways to learn things, but back even before my generation, you did a lot of your learning in the cars and in the bars, and that's kind of faded away just because the schedule is different for a lot of guys. Guys aren't making the same towns every night, things of that nature. But uh, I love teaching. I love getting the chance to talk about pro wrestling. I love it, especially when I can see that somebody cares enough to ask. If you, I can't tell you how. I mean, just this last Saturday, I did a show for Rick Michaels up in Canton, Georgia, and I was wrestling my buddy Todd Sexton, and we lived together in 2001. He trained at Shawn Michaels School, and like it was such an easy match for me just because I've known this dude forever. And before we went out, I got pulled aside. Hey, can you watch my match for me? Oh, 100%. Like, anytime somebody asks me to watch their match, I will go out of my way to watch their match. And I try to be very honest with my critiques too. I don't try to bash because, again, you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I try to be real big, especially even more so in my role now at NWA. But even prior to that, I'm pretty sure if you were to poll the guys like that do the dark matches and stuff, uh, I always try to make them feel welcome and hey guys, don't forget hard cams this way or this, that, and the third. Just whatever I could do to help because that is the future. Whether none of them hit or if just one of them hits, you meet the same people going up that you meet going
Yeah.
down,
Very true.
right? So I'd rather go down softly, which again is why I agent and not.
And another interesting thing about teaching, which I think in any form of teaching, not just in pro wrestling, but I'm sure it applies there too. You know, teaching others kind of teaches you too. Like
A
it's
billion
a
percent.
lot of times in schools, and I know this for wrestling. Once you get to a certain point, you've been training well, and maybe they'll start having you help teach those underneath, and that way now it's repetition, and you're looking for what they do wrong, and then you're like, okay,
Yes.
I need. So now you're thinking about what you do wrong or what you could do wrong by looking at what they do wrong, and it's just, I assume the same thing applies in this regard too.
Well, and I know, so I've helped train. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I've addressed here before. Like I helped train Xavier
Yep.
Woods, and there's a lot of guys that I've worked with along the way, and working with them has made me better, and that's why I like doing it. Woods' big thing was he could not throw an arm drag if he had 8 arms. I mean, he could not for whatever reason. His arm drags were clunky, and they just didn't work. And which is funny because my arm drags were natural. Like nobody ever taught me how to arm drag. I watched Ricky Steamboat, and I was just like, oh, you just do it this way. And I had to teach him how to throw an arm drag. I had to break down to myself how I do an arm drag and then regurgitate it to him. So
Yeah.
like it taught me how to teach. But I mean, it's getting in the teaching role is such a unique experience because you're almost watching wrestling in a new eye, right? Like I said, like I don't even know if I've addressed this. So like today is literally my 41st birthday.
Happy birthday.
So oh, thank you. So I've literally been watching pro wrestling for at least 39 years now, right? Like I'm assuming it was on somewhere in the background when I was one. I can't make that promise, and I don't want to tell a lie that I don't need to tell. So
I'd roll with it.
yeah, screw it, man. I was watching wrestling in the womb. Let's be honest. Uh, but when you watch it as a teacher, you're almost learning how to rewatch pro wrestling, which is wild, right? After 39 years of watching, I'm watching it in a new eye, which is crazy to me, right? Like it's so fascinating to me that like there's so many different levels of appreciating the art that is pro wrestling. And I think that's why it's one of the things that makes pro wrestling so magical to me. It speaks to you on so many different levels.
I know, I'm not sure where I heard this from, to be honest, but I know it was from Tommy Dreamer. And he always gave this advice to young guys, but really anybody in the business, but specifically young guys. When you watch back a match, try to watch it back 3 times. First, watch it back as, the wrestler to spot what you did wrong, what you did right. Watch it back as a fan, and then watch it back as a promoter. And that way you can try to see, specifically look for, the parts to make your game better in each regard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it's, and it's so, and some people don't understand how to do that, which again, it goes back to the teaching. Like, I would never, ever in a million years want to promote pro wrestling. That's just not my cup of tea. I'm so grateful for all the people out there that do it. it helps keep me as sane as humanly possible, which is not very sane, but still more sane than I would be. But to watch it through that eye, like what a promoter would want, right? You almost have to learn what a promoter's looking for before you can even begin to assess it in that manner. And again, that's just one of those levels of pro wrestling that, like, once you learn it, it's like, oh wow, there's this part too, and there's I love teaching kids how to use cameras. I love when we're sitting down and working, putting a match together, and oh well, if you go here, you've got the roaming cam, so you can make this facial, or give something that pregnant pause so you can find that camera so the people at home can see what you're feeling instead of you just feeling something. That's some of the stuff that's just like, oh man, I could do that all day. It gets me so excited to share that information that's been, and like I said, it's been passed down to me. It's not just like I woke up one day, I was like, oh, I'm the smartest man on the planet, got it figured out. Because I promise you, if I was the smartest man on the planet, probably wouldn't be pro wrestling, but I digress.
But I think that's why the player coach thing is so effective too, because I was talking to Kyle about this actually in our interview, and he was great, of course, and we're hopefully going to be doing a part 2. One thing that, I brought up to him was, and I guess the same goes to Joe too, because Joe used to wrestle as well, having that experience of being in the ring suddenly makes, being on commentary, now you can relate. Now you can understand a little better. Now, if you're producing or if you're working in creative, you can understand what the wrestler's going through. And, if you're a producer who has wrestled in the past, okay, this is what the wrestler's probably going to do. I know what they're thinking, but now I'm learning what the producers are thinking, and then you can blend it together.
Yes. And this thing is like, uh, the one advantage I have over the other producers, which just because I'm a player coach, is, Dr. Tom's never done a 3-way.
Yeah.
You
Really?
know,
Never?
not that I know of.
I mean, it makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, just when he was coming up, there weren't
Wasn't,
three-way matches,
yeah.
right? There weren't four-corner matches, right?
Yeah.
So like that's something that he's helped put matches together, but he's never been in the ring to feel
Mm-hmm.
what a 3-way needs to be, right? Whereas I'm cruiserweight coming up into 2000s. I had
Yeah.
more multi-man matches than I could ever have wanted.
You just brought out a
Uh,
whole nother question in my head. I'll ask when you.
but yeah, so like that's the kind of stuff that like I have in my back pocket that a lot of the producers at NWA don't, just because it was a different era. Uh, and I'm also a firm believer in, while not drastically changed, the psychology of pro wrestling, as far as transitions and getting from A to B to C, has changed. I call it the John Cena change, because it wasn't really until Cena got on top that I started noticing, like, oh, they did that this way instead of the way they used to do it, right? There's a lot less picking guys up and shooting them off the ropes just to put them back down.
Mm,
That's something that's kind of, uh, that's a thing of the past,
yeah.
where guys now are more creative in how to create space and then bring it back together. And that's something I experience every weekend. Like, how can I get from A to B without, just pick you up, shoot you off the ropes, and then go? And it's little advantages like that I have, that like I'm trying to help usher in towards, for all the guys and girls on our TV.
It's awesome. I love how supportive you are. I have a theory, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this and how it applies to you, because you're kind of in the middle, so you could either make or break it potentially. I
Okay.
hear a lot of veterans, the Jim Cornettes, even the Eric Bischoffs, the Bruce Pitchers, and guys who are in their 60s, 70s, 50s. They typically don't like watching or even hearing triple threat matches being booked 4 ways, 5 ways, 6 ways. But then, 20-year-old fans, 30-year-old fans, wrestlers in the business, they really like them, or they become accustomed to them. I have a theory that it's an age thing, because they didn't really start taking off until the 90s, and really not until, like you were saying, the 2000s, where it became a common thing. So I think it's
Yes.
just a age thing. Like, if you're older, you're not going to like them. If you're younger, you probably love them.
100%. And then the thing is, like, I remember the first 3-way I can remember is the night the line was crossed with
Yeah.
Sabu, Shane Douglas, and Terry Funk. And again, that, going back to not having ECW on TV in California, that was only something I read about. And it was just like this, oh my God, there was 3 people in the ring at one time. This
Wild.
is this is outrageous. Like, the possibilities are endless. Right? That's only something you would see in a battle royal, right?
Yeah.
But just like a whole match, like, oh my God. Uh, and so like that was something that caught my imagination way before I even saw it in action. Just because it was so unheard of. And I'm very much, especially in today's era, with the TikToks and the my 12-year-old, God bless him, has the attention span of a squirrel, right? uh just tonight we were trying to watch NXT, and it was Ilya Dragunov and Wes Lee, and they were going.
I bet it's
Oh,
awesome.
it was good. uh and I mean, like, they're right in the middle of a spot, and I'm really getting into it, and then I hear my son's phone. I'm like, what are you doing? And he was like, "Oh, I just wanted to check this video real quick." I was like, "Why? Like, these guys are dying."
Yeah.
But it wasn't, boom, 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 boom. It was more, telling a story and getting to the boom. Uh, And in those multi-man matches, you've got boom, 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 breathe, boom, 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 boom. And I think the younger generation, that's what they're seeing in all forms of media. It's
Yeah.
not just pro wrestling, right? I mean, even look at baseball, right? Like they've added the pitch clock, and games went from being 4 hours long to being 2 hours long. People are trying to speed up their entertainment in all manners. Um, and I love, I mean, especially when you get the right chemistry, man, you get a multi-man match. You've got so many toys to play with. You've got so much cool stuff you can do that you wouldn't normally have in a one-on-one contest. And it's just a different story to tell,
That's it, because
right?
I think the criticism is that there's no story in a three-way, or the story isn't strong in a three-way or a four-way or even a five-way or six-way. I don't think that has to be true. I think it's just, if the talent and the story is good, it's going to be good. It's just
Yes.
a different kind, right?
It's just, no, it's just a different story. It's just a different story. For example, if you go and watch this week's episode of Power Cheap Plug YouTube, um, there's a four-way with Dak Draper, Zicky Dice, Judias, and Gaagz The Gymp that I was the producer on. And when the match got done, like I was really proud of what we had come up with, right? Like I feel all four guys got their time to shine when they needed to shine. We got the story across that we wanted to get across. The finish came off smoothly. And in the truck, I'm sandwiched between Billy Trask, who's on the headset and is the director, and Billy Corgan, who's Billy freaking Corgan. And the match gets done, and Corgan looks up and he goes, "Man, that was excellent. Like that covered every base we needed to cover." And Billy Trask goes, "Oh yeah, Sal, you're so great with these multi-man matches, because you're not just getting one guy over, you're
Yeah.
getting everybody over." And that's the magic, right? That's the trick to it all. Is and I've even seen like Vince Russo will talk about like a 3 hour Raw, right? You got your A story, your B story, your C story. Multi-man matches are essentially the same way,
Mhm.
right? You got your A story, which is whatever your finish is, but you can throw in, oh, well, this guy can do this to this guy, and then we can do this here, and he can pull here. And, it's a more rapid form of storytelling, but you can still get a story in there.
My nerdy self compares it to the Avengers, right? The
Okay,
Avengers
yeah.
is, you could have your Captain America movie, which focuses on Captain America. You can have your Iron Man movie, focus on Iron Man, Black Panther, Shang-Chi, everybody. And then, when they come together, you're telling a different story. You're going to tell it differently, but, you have,
Absolutely.
this is Captain America's story going into this movie, and this is where it applies in this. And I think it's really appropriate to compare it to wrestling, because it's all one shared universe, and wrestling's kind of the same way.
100%.
So
Yes, very much so. That's
very
a great
nerdy.
analogy. Yes, no, but it's a great analogy.
All right, so we're so bad at moving ahead.
Yeah.
But there's a story that you've actually prepped before that I'm dying to hear. With Gangrel, who's come up on the channel a couple times. Ruthie J has been on the channel recently. She was trained by Gangrel. I got to hear this. What's the story?
Okay, yeah. So keep in mind, I'm a huge Gangrel guy, right? Like I remember, so like I dug the Vampire Warrior before he was Gangrel, and like he was the first guy I ever saw that came close to doing Muda's elbow.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
like I always dug his work, and I remember very vividly the Sunday Night Heat when he debuted against Scott Taylor, and he comes up through the fire, and he's spitting the blood. I was just like, oh, this guy's money, right? So
Coolest
I'm
thing
just like,
too.
yes, yeah, oh, yeah, no, plus that music. Come on, get out of my face. Uh, Out on the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling themes. Uh, so like I was just a huge Gangrel fan, and he would pop up on Georgia Indies all the time, and for whatever reasons, we never got to cross paths. And then just this last October, I get a phone call. Hey, would you be interested in doing a casket match with Gangrel? I was like, what words did you just say to me? Like, I've never been more interested in anything ever. Like, of course, I want to do a casket match with Gangrel.
Basic.
So, like, I'm on cloud nine, right? Like, this is amazing. And I have my mentality going into a match with a guy like Gangrel or a guy like Matt Hardy or, anybody of that stature where, like, okay, I'm not expecting you to take a lot of bumps. You can sell for me. I don't need you to bump, and that's okay, right? We can get you down without you having to flat back. I'm very, I worked Bullet Bob Armstrong about 800 times. I don't think he ever bumped for me. I got heat every time.
Adding
It's
that to the
okay.
list. We're definitely going to talk about that in the future.
So that, I got that same mentality going into this match. And so I'm like, oh, and he's like, blah, 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 blah. Maybe you clothesline me on the floor. I'm like, why would I do that? No, Gangrel, I don't want to do that. He's like, I feel like I want to give this guy his money's worth. I'm like, well, I mean, if you want to do it, I'll do it. But like, we put together a really good match. Like, I'm really excited about it, right? Because I'm an idiot, not once did I think, well, maybe I should check out this casket before we have this match, right? It's a casket match. It'll be fine.
Is this your first one?
Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, I've grown up on casket matches. Yeah. I know the score of this game. So we go out and we're having this match and blah, 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 blah. Well, what nobody decided to let he or I know was this wasn't a gimmicked casket. This was like legit, like from the mortuary. They're like, hey, let me borrow this real quick. We'll bring it back without a dead body. Or so we thought. So, Gangrel and I have this match, and like, I'm loving it, and he's having a great time, and like, it's really, really good. Like, I'm really proud of this match. He hits me with the impaler. He rolls me in the casket. He shuts the lid, and all the oxygen leaves.
Oh, no.
Right? Because it's a legit casket.
Dead people don't need to breathe.
Right? So, like, we just went like 15 minutes, and like, I'm not blown up, but I'm also breathing heavily because I've just physically performed for 15 minutes. And the lid shuts and all the oxygen goes. And I'm like, oh, I'm not a claustrophobic man. I go into immediate freak out mode, right? So I'm pushing on this casket, trying to open the door because I don't care, right? Look, I already heard the bell ring. I did. Gangrel, you won. Congratulations. I just don't want to die. At this point, living is something I'm interested in. So I'm pushing at this door and it's not moving. It's just not giving at all. And I'm like, I'm panicking, which is not helping the situation, right?
Not at all.
Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Like, nobody knows. Like, I don't know what to do. And so finally, I take one last half, like, I've got to get out of here. And I shove as hard as I can. And the bell flies off. Like, there was no weight. I'm like, what the? How did this happen? 10 seconds ago, it was the heaviest thing I've ever done in my life. Now all of a sudden it's got wings. This makes no sense. So like I catch it and crack it and let the air get in and, try to keep it as closed as possible while still not dying.
Yeah.
So I get to the back and I'm like, what happened? And the guy was like, oh, I thought I went and just got a real casket because I thought it'd be more comfortable inside. I was like, well, yeah, thanks. My corpse appreciates the comfort. And Gangrel gets to the back and he's like, hey, man, thank you for the match. Everything good. And we're talking. And I'm telling him, like, yeah, everything was great until the lid, the oxygen. And he goes, oh, man, that's my bad. I was like, what do you mean it's your bad? He goes, yeah, well, I mean, I didn't know. So after the match, I slammed the casket lid open and then I stood on the casket and got my beauty shot. So I'm literally in this casket fighting for my life. And he's just standing on top of it, like, check it out, guys. I won.
Oh, banging and banging on top of the casket while you're
Yes.
gasping for air.
He's sipping his blood like it's wine, and I'm literally dying underneath his feet.
That is incredible. That was well worth it. I am so glad you.
And that's the time I'm the only idiot that's like, hey, guys, I'll die. Oh, well, just put me in the casket alive. I'll just die in there. Right? Most people wait to get into the casket till after they die, not Sal Rinauro. I'm just like, sounds like too much work. I'll just go lay down in there. You close the door.
That's officially become one of my favorite stories on the channel. I think number one will forever be the Coco Beware story. That I don't think that can be topped. I don't
Unreal.
Check that out, guys, if you haven't already, because I still laugh at it just thinking about it. It was that good.
As do I. I lived it. That's still like I have to question the legitimacy of it sometimes.
All right. So this I actually was originally going to start with this, but we had 1,000 other things to talk about. You've been on the channel 3 times before now. Something is a little different this time.
Yes.
You look a little different this time around.
Little less time in the tanning bed, huh? I'm telling on myself. No, yeah. So, in January of this year, this is how I know I don't have any real friends. In January of this year, I was standing in line at Walmart, and you know how they got the monitors over the cashiers or whatever. So I'm standing there and I just happen to glance up and I see a guy behind me with this big bald spot. And I was like, dang, man, that poor guy. I feel for you. Oh, no. Oh, no, that's me. So I pay for my stuff. I go straight to the car and I call Billy Corgan. I'm like, hey, it's time. This hair's got to go. And he's like, what are you talking about? I go, look, I'm telling you right now, I'm shaving my head and I'm going to get somebody to pay me to do it. I'm giving you first dibs, but somebody's going to pay me to shave my head because it's bad. It's so bad. I had no idea it was this bad. This is offensive. This is heartbreaking. And he's like, well, if you could wait till April, I think we can make it happen there. And I was like, absolutely. I'll give you 4 months. It's gone. It's got to go. And then, and then my quote unquote friends, I called them. It was just like, why would you not tell me? I look like a crystal ball back here. How would I ever know? They're like, oh, we thought you knew. I was like, how?
Did you
not one of you?
For the next 4 months, were you constantly looking at it, like where it was like destroying and eating away at you?
It's all I could see. It was all I could see. Every time I would feel like a drop of rain, I just feel it like on the skull. Like, this is awful. What is happening? What happened to my luscious head of hair? Genetics are the worst sometimes. But yeah, actually, the idea I pitched, I had a great idea that I was really hoping they were going to run with, but they went in a different route. My idea, I wanted to lose it to Kerry Morton.
All right.
And the thought process was, do a couple. Keep in mind, this is January, right? So I was going. This was the pitch. We start with a promo with the Miserably Faithful, and Father Mitchell is basically talking to Max and Judas, while Gaagz and I are just in the background being weird, creepy people, or whatever Gaagz is, and
An
You
imp,
know,
maybe? I don't know.
yeah, well, verdict's still out. But Mitchell's, with the dawn of a new year, my my dreams of collecting have grown, and I dream of gold in the NWA. And you see me like perk up and run off screen. And then they wrap up the promo however they need to, whatever. Well, maybe the next episode of Power, have Kyle at the desk and I bust the podium. I need a shot at the World Junior title. I've got to bring the father gold. I've got to make the father happy. And Kyle goes, well, Sal, you haven't even won a match in like a year. Why would you get a title shot? It's for the father. It's for the father. It's for the father. And I wander off, right? Maybe do something like that a couple times where clearly I am not getting this title shot. So then I do what any crazy person who's desperate to get a title shot would do: beat up Ricky Morton and try to cut his mullet. And then Kerry makes the save and goes, hey, you want a shot at the title? That's fine. But you got to put your hair on the line. You want to cut my dad's mullet? I'm gonna cut your hair. And then we go have the match. Blah blah blah. Kerry wins. They shave my head. That was my idea, only because the thought of me trying to shave the mullet of Ricky Morton, like, come on.
Yeah.
Why hasn't anybody done this before?
Okay, since you brought it up, again, this is how we're never going to get to 2006 or 2007.
It'll happen.
Ricky
We'll
Morton.
get there.
Let's talk about Ricky Morton, because how cool is it that you get to work with Ricky Morton?
So I've wrestled Ricky quite a few times here in the South, and every time I wrestled Ricky, it was the first time he met me. Right? Like, Ricky had no clue who I was, but my favorite one is, it was me, and I apologize to my partner that evening. I have no clue who his name is, but it was myself and another gentleman, and he has a nickname that I will explain to you in this story. It's myself and another gentleman versus Ricky Morton and Brad Armstrong, right?
Wow.
Like
Really cool.
What? Yeah, super cool. So I start off with Brad, and I mean, what a pro, right? And we're doing the thing, and he's in the ring like, oh, like, you could tell because he had never wrestled me before. He was literally doing the feeling out process. And once he can tell that I'm with it, he starts to get with it too. He's like, oh yeah, we can do this, this, and this, and we're having a good time, right? And so Ricky comes in, we do something quick. Brad comes back in. Once Brad gets my arm, he goes, all right, cut me off, touching your partner, have him come in, take an arm drag. Gotcha, Chief. So I give him the old knee to the gut, go to the partner, go, hey, man, feed in for an arm drag. My partner comes in, trips over the bottom rope, feeds around, and proceeds to take the worst arm drag anyone's ever seen, to the point where Ricky on the corner goes, God, boy, I'm tagging the good one. And so sure enough, they go to a spot and they tag me back in, and the other guy doesn't get in the ring ever again. They refuse to let him back in the ring. So from that point on in my life, he's been the not good one. Again, whomever you are, if you want to reach out and tell me your name, I'd be more than happy to know. But until then, you're the not good one.
Let's be honest. That might stick even afterwards.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he'll forever be the not good one. Let's be honest. But, and then I wrestled Ricky. Like, I did a singles match with Ricky. I wrestled Ricky and Robert. And every time I was like, oh, Ricky Morton, nice to meet you. Like, bro. Like the first time, one of the first times I tell Kerry this story quite often. The first time I met Kerry, I was at a show and Ricky Morton was late. And I'm like match 3 or 4, and I just got back from the back, and Ricky's like a match after me. And when I went to the ring, he hadn't arrived yet. So we're kind of biding time, waiting to get the high sign, like, okay, you can go home now. Ricky's here. So we get the sign, we finish up the match. I get to the back, and on my way, we're crossing paths, and Ricky goes, "Hey, boy, you do me a favor and watch my boy for me real quick?" I go, "Yes, sir." And he's literally in a car seat. He's probably not even a year old. Fast forward to 2023, it's Kerry.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I've known Kerry way longer than I'm proud to admit.
And credit to you, you kind of predicted the future. Last time, I believe, when you were on the show, it could have been the second time, I'm not sure.
Okay.
You brought up how it had to be the last time because it was right after the Mexico tour. You brought up how he's a natural heel and that he should be a heel because he's so punchable. And it wasn't too long after that. And I don't know if it was inside information or you're just that good, but right after.
No. At that point, it was not planned for him to be a heel. But Kerry's going to carry. But no, I mean, but fast forward to now where I'll walk into a room and Ricky knows my name.
That's cool.
He, Sal, good to see you, boy. Come here. And like, again, at the last set of tapings, Kerry and Alex Taylor were teaming, I think against the Spectaculars, and I was the producer on that match. And Kerry had an idea, and he ran it by Ricky, and Ricky goes, "Boy, you got to talk to Sal. He's your producer." And it's just like,
what?
Yeah, like, okay. But like, I mean, it's Ricky Morton. It's Ricky freaking Morton. And like, have I told you the story about when he worked Nick Aldis at the Power tapings?
Nope.
Okay. So here's one for you. So this is back when we were still doing in GPB Studios, and it's Ricky Morton versus Nick Aldis for the NWA World title, right? And it had been mentioned in the locker room, like, hey, after the match, baby faces go out and, give Ricky Morton respect because he's Ricky freaking Morton.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. That's, I'm just glad to be a part of it. So Nick and Ricky are in the ring and they're doing their thing. And then it kind of becomes, well, let's not send all the baby faces. We'll just send a couple. And I'm standing in line like, man, I really want to go out there. And they start peeling guys off like, And so it came down to like, it was only going to be Eli Drake, James Storm, Trevor Murdoch, and a couple others. Well, I'm standing right next to Eddie Kingston and Homicide. And they weren't a part of the group either. And Homicide goes, "Yo, man, ain't no way I ain't going out there." It's like, man, I can follow Homicide. Nobody's going to yell at Homicide. And Eddie's just like, "Oh, I'm going." And I was like, man, if I go with those two, I think I'm safe. So sure enough, they send the baby faces. And once I saw Eddie and Homicide start going, I said, screw it. I don't want to miss this, right? Like, this is going to be a special moment. This is just something I want to be a part of. And sure enough, I busted with them and nobody said a word. And it was so cool to be in that ring, to celebrate Ricky Moore. I mean, just like, he's one of those guys that, like, there aren't enough flowers to give him.
Yeah.
Like, he's always so giving. He's always so helpful. He's still good. Like, he can still go.
Wow.
And that was one of those things. Like, if you go back and watch it, I kind of hang out in the corner for a lot of it, but I'm standing in GPB Studios in the ring full of guys that, again, like, these are guys that I kind of looked up to. On the corner is Billy Corgan, and I'm in the middle of it all.
So cool.
Not even supposed to do it. I just snuck out there because I didn't want to miss this opportunity. Uh, it's just one of those. There's a picture of everybody, and I love that picture just because I know, like, I'm genuinely. It's not just like, oh, life is weird. No, I was definitely told you're not supposed to be here, and I was like, I'll do it anyways. It's cool.
You got to
It's
post that
cool.
on social media.
Okay, I'll have. Yeah, it's very like it's surreal. It's just one of those surreal moments that like I'm so glad I said screw it. I got to be a part of this, and I did it because there was no kickback. There was nobody was mad that I went out and celebrated a literal living legend. Uh, I'm glad I got to do it for Ricky. I'm glad I got to experience it with my own eyes. But now this dude knows my name. That's
Amazing.
will never ever make sense that Ricky Morton will fade ideas to me. Like wild, just wild.
And not only is that, an extremely special moment, but I think you just created like my dream King of Trios team is Homicide, Eddie Kingston, and Sal Rinauro. Like,
Yes.
like if King of Trios ever returns in some form, that's the team
Done.
we need.
Done. I recently I was again one of those weird like life doesn't make sense. Uh I was in a car. Bill Barron's had rented a car. Maybe it was the Chicago loop. I think it was Chicago. Bill had his own car, and it's one of these, computer driven cars that, you don't do anything with that I don't understand. Uh, and so Bill had asked me, hey, do you want to ride with me to the venue? And I'll go, absolutely. So we're headed to the car and there's Homicide. And Bill goes, hey, Homicide, do you want to get in too? And Homicide's like, oh, yeah, well, let me hop in. So, I obviously, Bill's in the driver's seat. He's not really driving, but Homicide will get shotgun. I'll sit in the back. I'll always, fade to letting the veteran get up front anyways, much less, somebody that I have insane amount of respect for like Homicide. And so I'm sitting in the back and I just kind of look up and I'm like, why am I in this car? None of this. What is happening right now? So a few of my buddies that I know, they got a video. I just pulled out the phone and just recorded a couple of minutes of Bill explaining to Homicide how this car works. And Homicide just being fascinated by, oh, he read that light. Like, how did know it was turning yellow? Just like,
I love Homicide.
oh yeah, he's a quick Homicide story, a quick aside. So at the 75th, he wrestled Joe Alonzo, right? And we kind of knew Joe was going to get some heavy hands, but that's part of the game. Uh, and we're in the agent meeting, and it gets to Homicide versus Joe Alonzo. Pat, who's the agent on it? Pat goes Sal, and I was like, what? Why isn't Homicide just the agent for him? I'm like, okay, whatever. That's a match off for me. I'll just go find out what Homicide wants to do, and we'll do it, right? Yeah. So I finally get the Homicide. I'm like, so tell me what you got. He was like, oh no, man, I got like 4 matches tonight, so you're kind of gonna have to help me with this one. I'm like, okay. Like, so now I'm feeding Homicide ideas for his own match. And again, this is just one of those things that like, what is happening? This is real life, and at one point, because I really wanted to turn up just what a scumbag Joe Alonzo is, right? So like we're doing something where Homicide flips him off, and I was like, what if Joe grabs your finger and spits at you? And he's like, oh no, I don't do that spitting stuff, dog. Like, ain't nobody spitting on me. I'm like, okay, cool, man. Dude, I'm just throwing ideas out there. I'm not married to it at all. I don't care. Uh, Fast forward to the match.
Oh, no.
They get in the corner. Like, I mean, this is before the finger spot. Like, they're fighting in the corner, and Homicide spits on them, and it's like, come on, dude. So they get to the back. I mean, the match was awesome. I loved this match. Uh, but they get to the back, and everybody high fives and hugs all around. And Billy, and it's another one of those things where, like, I'm in the truck and I'm watching Billy Corgan and Pat Kenny react to this match, and they're getting into it. Like, there was a huge false finish that I helped put together, and they were convinced. So it's 1, 2, oh, to the point where Billy Corgan grabs my arm and was like, oh, you got me on that one. And I'm like, what is happening?
Oh, that's great.
This is insane. But after the match or whatever, everything settles down. It's just me and Homicide, and I was like, so you don't do spitting stuff in pro wrestling, huh? And he was like, I wasn't thinking, it just happened. You're my favorite, Homicide. You're one of my favorites of all time. He's just the best.
That's amazing. Now, speaking of, well, this is an awkward transition. I was going to say bodily fluids. Let's talk about your tag team with Gaagz The Gymp.
Yes, no, that's about as smooth a transition as you're going to get.
I want to hear about how it formed, what you think of it, how you enjoy teaming up with them, everything.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, like, I would have never in a million. The whole Gaagz The Gymp thing was an accident.
Really?
Yes. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell the story, but here we go. The original idea was, Sinister Minister needs an imp. And Billy Corgan heard it and said, oh, he does need a gimp. You're right. No. An imp. Yeah, gimp. That would be great. And it's just one of those things that just kind of, when I first heard the idea, I was like, oh no, there's going to be some work to do here. But it just clicked. Like, it was just, I love working with them. And again, it's one of those things where, like, wrestling with a gimp that doesn't know how to wrestle is way harder than one would think, because he's got a limited moveset. Mm-hmm. There's only like 3 or 4 things, like, outside of spanking and scratching, there's not much a gimp can do in a pro wrestling ring. So it becomes, how can we put ourselves into this position to where the gimp can effectively be a pro wrestler?
Yeah.
There was a period on Georgia Indies for me where, I don't know how this happened, but I got stuck in various gimmick matches with different weapons, and somehow the weapon always ended up becoming a crotch piece. So, for example, I'd have a ladder, and it would magically find its way around my waist. Or, as absurd as it sounds, there was a mirror one time that became a bridge, that became mirror crotch feet. Sometimes things just happen, folks. I apologize. One of my all-time favorite Gimp moments, we were doing a tag match. It's me and the Gimp versus JTG and Fandango, which sounds just like a fever dream. Just, and this is one of those things that I think really, like, as we were putting it together, because, like, somehow I ended up taking the lead on putting this match together. And it's one of those things where Kyle saw me take the lead on it. He was like, dude, this is where your future lies. Because they were throwing out ideas, and I was like, guys, I hate all of this. And they're like, why? And I was like, because it was early, it was stuff with Fandango and Gimp early on. And I was like, the whole story of the match needs to be Fandango wants to get in with the Gimp. Like that's the heart and soul of this match. If we do it right off the bat, we're giving it all away. Like, no, I think Fandango's so fascinated by this Gimp that he wants it. And I'm the heel that keeps taking away the one thing that Fandango wants, which is the Gimp. And then finally, when we get to the hot tag, it's to the Gimp and it's to Fandango. And then the magic happens. And they were like, yes. So we're putting it together, blah, 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 blah. And we're trying to figure out a spot where the Gimp is listening to Fandango, where he's, Fandango's just giving orders and the Gimp is responding as he's told, but we have to get me bumped off somehow. And I don't know. It was one of those things where we hadn't ironed it out, and it was we'll figure it out. We'll circle back. Let's go get catering or whatever. And so I had walked away. I'm not anywhere near the match. I'm in a completely separate room, and I was just like, oh, Gimp is the crotch piece. And I can only imagine what everybody around me thought as I'm yelling, running down the hall, use the Gimp as your crotch.
Oh my God.
And sure enough, we get to, Fandango gets in. He tells the Gimp to get down. The Gimp gets down. He tells the Gimp to get up. He gets up. We do that a couple times. Finally, he picks him. I come in. I shove Fandango. He pushes me. The Gimp charges at him. He catches him in a waistlock and starts battering ramming me with the Gimp in a wheelbarrow position. It's just like
amazing.
Yeah, it's just one of those like, what are we doing? We're adults.
Pro wrestling, ladies and gentlemen.
We're in public. What are we doing? But it worked, right? It was exactly what the spot needed to be. Because again, it's a Gimp and it's Fandango. Like
you brought up something that I think is pretty interesting there, though. You talked about how we
just one thing that was interesting.
One thing that completely changes the subject. That's interesting. Oh,
yes.
You brought up with Gaagz one of the challenges, but it's also part of the fun, is that he's not a wrestler like in the story, right? So you have to work around that. So when we were talking to Caprice on the channel, we somehow, again, this is how the channel works, we somehow started talking about the Mean Street Posse. And where he was talking about how, I believe it was Joey Abs, he was the only one that had experience going into it. And that it was almost frustrating because here's a guy who was actually a good wrestler, but he had to pretend that he couldn't wrestle, and that kind of dampened his career. And it's interesting to think about how, if, the mysterious Gaagz the Gymp, is somebody who can't wrestle, but then you have to slowly start evolving that over time, because now you're talking about later on, he's doing super kicks, he's doing this and that. So for you as a producer and just somebody who's seen this with the Mean Street Posse, with Gaagz 1,000 times, what is your mindset on that? Like, how can you evolve that where it's not going to just completely like damage somebody?
Well, I'm real big in creating a reason for why. Mm-hmm. Here's one of my my favorite producer quotes that I use a lot of the time to the guys. It's not what, it's why. Why am I doing this? Why is Gaagz able to, finally reverse this maneuver? Why is Gaagz fighting back? Why is Gaagz give me a reason and we can do it. It's pro wrestling, right? It's our art. It's our canvas to paint. Why are we painting it this way? Not just what. if Gaagz the Gimp went out there and did a collar and elbow tie up and they took a wrist and he reversed it and they put him in a hammerlock and then he reversed the hammerlock and went to a headlock and did a takeover, then they did a head scissors and he nipped up, then he's just a dude in a mask.
Yeah.
He's not Gaagz the Gimp. He's just another guy that's got a character that doesn't fit his wrestling style. What's the point? That's not his character. Why? Why would he do this, right? Because that's who I ended up losing my hair to was Gaagz. And that was a lot of the fun of putting the match together was, okay, why is Gaagz firing up? Why can Gaagz hit, why are we in a situation where Gaagz is grabbing a hold? Let's figure it out. And that's the stuff that it's so fascinating to me. Is why are we doing this? Why is it relatable to people? Why would people pay to see this? Then let's do it. And Gaagz, keep in mind, I love pro wrestling. Just, hey, two guys go out there and tear it up. I'm not I've got to have every match have a story. Like, oh no, these two guys are really good at pro wrestling. Yeah, I'll just watch. Sign me up, please. I'm in. But when you have an emotional connection to a character, like again, Ahmed Johnson's on my Mount Rushmore. One of my all-time favorite pro wrestlers is the Boogeyman. I love the Boogeyman. I can't get enough of the Boogeyman. I don't want to watch the Boogeyman have a 20-minute match. I don't.
Would you take the
I
worms?
do have. Oh, well, no, so
we'll get to it.
I just had this vision a couple weeks ago. I would never promote pro wrestling. If I ever did, the one match I would promote is Scotty 2 Hotty versus the Boogeyman.
The worm versus the worms.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously it's blah, blah, blah. Scotty hits the bulldog. He goes for the worm. WORM. He does the worm and Boogeyman eats him. And we go home. Because that's the only way to end that match.
Fantastic.
I forget the question, but God, please somebody book that for me. Pretty please. Just Scotty 2 Hotty and Boogeyman in any situation. How has that not happened? How has Kevin Thorne and Gangrel not been tag team champions of the world 12 times? These are certain questions that I have that I don't have answers for.
Rodman is the worm, so you might as well just have him there too. And there's a new trio team.
Come on. They can wrestle me, Homicide, and Eddie Kingston. We're getting the brackets together, guys.
We just need the financial backing. Come on.
100%.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the insight. There is one subject that is admittedly a little heavier. We had talked about a lot of fun stuff, and your stories are amazing. I wanted to talk about the passing of Jay Briscoe.
Yeah.
He's somebody who you've known for a long, long time. And it was obviously very sudden. And could you just talk about everything? Obviously, if we do, if I'm lucky enough to do another interview, another 2 interviews, I'm sure he'll come up plenty of times. But if you could just talk a little bit about him, because I know your insight last time or one of the times previously on Jimmy Rave was one of my favorite things, just because it keeps the legacy alive.
Yeah, and Jay, it was one of those things where I was at the house and I got a text and it just said, Jay, no. And I was like, Jay, no? Like, Jay, what could that mean? Like, there's a lot of Jays, right? So my mind starts racing. Jay Lethal, could it be Christian, right? What is this? And so I had to follow up. Like, what are you talking about? And, then they sent me the link and I was just like, with Jimmy was in a bad way and was kind of headed down that path. And when he passed, it still sucked. but it wasn't completely blindsiding. Uh, Jay, I mean, it was total left field. I mean, it just, I, Jay and I became friends when we were teenagers, right? When they were, Jay and Mark were coming down to Wildside. You know, Mark wasn't even old enough to wrestle in like Philadelphia at the time. And when Jay and Mark and Red and the SATs, whenever they came down to Wildside, they ended up staying at the time. Myself, Todd Sexton, and Tony Stradlin, which I can't remember his WWE name. He was in Deep South. He never got on TV. But we had an apartment, and anytime the guys from up north came down, they ended up staying with us because we were the only ones that weren't old, married with kids that had their own place to stay. You know, most of the guys had the guys our age were, most of them were still at home with their parents.
Mhm.
And so Mark and Jay would come down, and you know, they would do a couple wild side shots, and then they would usually stay until Wednesday when they would go to Nashville for the TNA pay-per-views. So I mean, it wasn't just like see him at a show and high five and laugh and then see him at the next show. I mean, they kind of stayed with us for days at a time. And I mean, and we were babies. You know, like we didn't know it at the time. We didn't realize it, but I mean, you know, I was 18, 19. They were, I think Jay's a year younger than me and Mark's 2 years younger than me. So, I mean, we were just kids, and living our pro wrestling dreams and having a good time, just being stupid idiots that were, you know, 18, 19-year olds on our own. Uh, eh, I mean, but it's one of those things where, you know, especially in pro wrestling, if you don't see, you can go months and years without seeing somebody. And then when you see them again, you pick right back up where you left off. Jay was a big Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders fan, and I'm a Raiders fan. So that was like one of the first things that like that was an immediate connection for us, especially at that time because they were good. As the years went on, and the Raiders turned into not the best team, we still were like the two that believed, right? Like when Mark and Jay came back to Ring of Honor after their first hiatus in '05, it was a three-way tag match, and I was in it. And both of them were so excited uh, because they knew, like, Sal's going to take care of us. Sal's going to make sure, you know, we shine. Not that they needed me to do it. I mean, talk about just an exceptional talent.
Yeah.
Even back then, I mean, they were so far ahead of the curve that it's foolish. It was nutty to think about how good they were. But as good as both Jay and Mark were in the ring, like they were just they're just good people. Like uh I remember, you know, the ROH tapings in Philly when we were doing the ECW Arena HD net tapings, and they would have the Briscoe RV in the back, and Papa Briscoe was out there. I mean, it's just Jay was such a cool dude, and I will. I've got. I mean, there's just tons of stories, but my favorite story was probably the last time I saw him. And you know, they'd come to NWA, which I was pushing for hard. Yeah, I had no stroke, but you know, like I would drop it in people's ears all the time, like, dude, we should get the Briscoes. We should get the Briscoes. The Briscoes are available. Let's get the Briscoes. When they got announced for the Crockett Cup, I was like, oh my God, yes, those are all my dudes.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, they were just I was so excited to see them. and they did a couple loops for us. And before I left, I had mentioned to Jacob, yeah, because he always, he always wants to know like who's new, who's going to be at these tapings that hasn't been at the normal ones. And so when I told him the Briscoes, he was like, and it's still funny to me. It's just one of those things that like I don't know why it struck a chord, but even then, I told Jacob, I was like, oh, the Briscoes will be there. And he was like, no way, you don't know the Briscoes. And I'm like, dude, what, are you kidding me? Like, out of all the people I know, why is it unbelievable that I know the Briscoes? Like, that's insane. But like, I don't know. So I told them about it, right? And uh the story's kind of twofold, but this the this is right before they had their first match with FTR.
All right.
Uh, and I had told them the story about Jacob, and it was Jay's idea. He was like, "Oh, well, we need to shoot a video, or take a picture or something with us all together." And I was like, "Oh my God, that'd be the best, please." Plus, we just don't have any pictures of us together, anyways. Uh, but then there was a spot where I think it was just me and no, it was Gaagz. Gaagz and I run in and beat up Matt Taven. Briscoes make the save. Uh, and Jay was like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Dude, all I want to do is keep you healthy so I can see this FTR match." That's priority. I don't care what you do to me. I can't not let this match happen. I'm so excited for it. And he was like, "Okay, man, yeah, no, like, and he was excited about the match too." So, you know, we go out and we do the deal or whatever. They hit the big shoulder tackle, and you know, as they hit me with the tackle, I look up at Jay and I go, "Raiders rule," and he was like, "Yeah, boy," and he looks right in the hard cam. Just one of those stupid little things. But we get to the back and he was like, "Hey, we got to shoot that thing for your son." I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." So, I just whipped out the camera and Mark and Jay just started saying just these wonderful words about me to my son. Uh, where even in the moment, I was just like, "Man, that was very nice of you guys. Like, you didn't have to do that." And Jay was like, "Come on, man, you're family." And it's just how it was. Like I didn't text him every day. We didn't talk all the time, but like when we were around each other, we were around each other. We were always talking, we were always having a good time. Uh, and when he passed, I took a screenshot of the three of us and I posted it online. Because it was just so sudden. It just, I mean, you don't always know the last time you're going to see somebody, and I mean, especially then because I was still pushing for the Briscoes to come. Like my big vision was the Briscoes win the NWA World Tag Titles. Like that was something I was all on board for, and I was trying to make happen. I really, really, really wanted it to happen, uh, but for whatever reason, uh, it just didn't pan out that way. Uh, but I didn't. You know, the thing is, obviously, I didn't know it was going to be the last time I would see him. But even if I did know, I wouldn't have changed anything. Like I wouldn't have done anything different. I mean, when they left, it was hugs and it was, love you guys, see you soon, and laughs and you know completely burying the Raiders while all at the same time hoping that they can have a winning season. and it's just wild. It's just I tell people all the time, life is too short.
Yeah.
Like enjoy what you have, because you just don't know. You just don't know when it's your turn. You just don't know. So like enjoy it while you can. Get the most out of it. And like as much as it sucks, like moments like losing Jay just reinforce that to me, where I can't tell you one bad moment I ever had with Jay Briscoe. I didn't have one. Didn't exist. Never happened. We had tons of time spent together. Never had a bad moment. And, I'm so thankful for the time I got to share with him and the time I still, we still have Mark, and I love Mark to death. And it's just, it's so crazy to think about, because at the end of the day, like he was what, 37, I think.
I think that's right.
Uh, he was still a baby,
Yeah.
right? 37, 37. That's way, way too soon. I mean, and all of this is aside from the fact that he was really, really good at his profession.
Mm.
He was really good. And all of that pales in comparison to the dude that Jay was. I just, like I said, I can't name a bad moment I had with Jay Briscoe. And I hate that I'll never have another one.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. It was a beautiful, touching tribute to him. It's an interesting thing because you can provide insight from Jay the human being, right? Because you have millions of fans who know him, and love him and loved his work. But for you, there's a special bond. On the subject that though, I was thinking, especially with the recent passings of Terry Funk and Bray Wyatt, and obviously people who are close to either one obviously are going to be tremendously affected. But you see the outpouring of love from the fans and how they're affected by it. And this is another way where wrestling is so different to most other forms of entertainment, right? If you see a movie star pass away, maybe you've seen a couple movies, maybe you've seen a dozen other movies. For a guy, let's just talk about Bray Wyatt, because he's another guy who passed away far too young.
Way too young.
Innovator. We could praise him until forever. Actually, I think our first interview we did together, maybe it was the second one, it had to be the first one, was right after he returned at Extreme Rules, and you talked about what a meaningful moment that was with you and your son. But the thing I wanted to get at is if I've been watching Bray since he was Husky Harris. So and then I'm a big wrestling nerd, so I'm always reading about it. I'm always seeing the discourse online and this and that. So in a way, Bray has been part of my life without me ever meeting him on a almost daily basis for 13 years straight. And there's not many other fields of entertainment or anything else where you have that kind of constant relationship with a figure, even if you don't know them.
Absolutely. And I mean, because like you take and this is just the first one that jumps out at me, Chadwick Boseman, right? So like when he passed, a lot of people, oh my God, the Black Panther died.
Yeah.
But like and again, it's perspective. Perspective's such a weird thing. He was always Jackie Robinson from 42 to me. Who Jackie Robinson had already passed, right? So like as sad as it was, and it's heartbreaking, and I feel for everybody, but like the character of the Black Panther still lives on, right? They still made a Black Panther movie after Chadwick Boseman and all that stuff.
Great honor to him.
Yes. But like, especially like with the J, or I mean, just with any of them, like a Bray Wyatt, who, as a fan, this is just from a fan's perspective, right? You watched him grow into this character, and then become that character, right? And that's who he was. He wasn't a guy playing Bray Wyatt. No, he was Bray Wyatt. He was the Fiend. He was that guy. And again, with the beauty of pro wrestling, where you can fantasy book for days and days and days, and it's just nutty to think about. I mean, the Bray Wyatt thing, like you said, and we've touched on it before. Like, dude, Bray Wyatt was like my son's favorite wrestler. So like, I had already gone on the road. I decided to drive to St. Louis, irrelevant, but I was already on the road to St. Louis. I had already passed through like Tennessee when the news broke. And then it became, well, how do I tell Jacob that Bray Wyatt's gone? Right? Like I just, because I wasn't even here to comfort him, but like he just like every other wrestling fan, he had read on dirt sheets or whatever that Bray Wyatt was coming back soon. So like he was getting amped up for the return of Bray Wyatt. And for that to never get to transpire is heartbreaking for, everybody involved, everybody that's affected by it, right? From the family to the friends to the locker room to uh, just the fans. Like when you let a guy like Bray Wyatt, or you let a Terry Funk, or you let a Jay Briscoe into your life, right? Like whether you intend to or not, they become a part of your family. And to lose them, it's tough. It's losing a family member. It's tough.
And shout out to WWE because the tribute to Funk and Bray were beautiful. They were really well done. One thing I always think back on is that promo Bray had, the SmackDown after he returned, where who knows what the story was, but it felt like the authentic window. And who knows what it was or what it could have been. And that's the beauty of what Bray was, because you don't know. But
absolutely,
the authenticity of what it felt authentic, whether it was or it wasn't, it felt it, and it felt real, and that's what was beautiful about it.
That's the magic. That's the magic of all of this. It was awesome, and it was just the whole lead up to all of it, just the following the White Rabbit and all that stuff was so not pro wrestling that it was perfect for pro wrestling. And like that's the creative genius that like God, I wish. I wish we would have got to see where all of this was going to. In a war, especially like in pro wrestling, where it's a world of like everybody knows everything before it happens.
Yeah.
Where you can go online and find out all the surprise entrants in the 2032 Royal Rumble tomorrow. I'll never. So I was doing quite a bit of extra work towards the back half of 2022, the beginning of 2023. And so I saw Uncle Howdy in the back, and Jacob would pester me mercilessly. Who's Uncle Howdy? Who's Uncle Howdy? And I refused to ever tell him. Never would I tell him. I was like, dude, I don't know. He's just some weird dude. It's just a dude in a mask. I have no idea. Because that magic, right? That's the magic. It could have been anybody. It could have just been a dude named Uncle Howdy. Who knows? Right? And that was the magic that Bray Wyatt was able to encapsulate, where it was always questions and not answers. It was just, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, he just losing guys like that so young. It's just, like I said, it's like losing a member of your family. It really is. There's no other way to put it.
I guess it's always hard because you can't really say there's a positive in anything when somebody passes, but at least that legacy will be around as long as there's video. As long as humans are there to pass it around. Jay, Jimmy, you know what I mean? Just they made their impact on the business in their own ways, and that's And that, again, that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because no matter how many people see it, my hope is that it'll stay online forever, and somebody could look
Well,
up, you know.
well, and it's just like we were talking about earlier, where my name popped up on the credits with Dr. Tom,
Mhm.
and that was the first time it was real to me, because it's forever. No matter what happens today, tomorrow, next week, next month, that's forever. That I will forever be listed as a producer next to Dr. Tom. And that's insane. Like that's that's bigger than me. That's bigger than it's forever until the earth stops existing. And if we don't colonize Mars or whatever the game plan is, once humans stop humaning, that's when that ends. But until then, I'm forever a producer with Dr. Tom.
Wild.
That's wild, right? It's wild.
We're going to start wrapping things up soon. I've kept you for a long time. I appreciate it. I just want to throw a couple quick things your way. One is, you brought it up briefly, and I can't not touch on it. You talked about working with Bullet Bob, and that just sounds incredible. Can you please talk about Bullet Bob Armstrong?
Yeah, I mean, he's the toughest dude you've ever met in your life. Like, he's one of those guys that, like, uh, a lot like Jay. Like, I don't have a bad Bullet Bob moment, right? Like, I didn't know he was missing part of his finger until we were in the ring one night. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? He's like, man, I haven't had that in years. Like, crazy. But I mean, he was he was very much a walk and talk guy, you know, as friendly as the day is long. Just, yeah, could never had a bad day, always in a good mood,
Roughly what
tough
year
as
was
nails.
this, or what period?
This would have been 04 till about 08.
Okay.
I mean, just all over, Alabama, Georgia. I mean, I was on a ton of shows with Bullet Bob. With Bullet Bob and Brad and Scott and Steve, Road Dog. I've messed with that whole family. We've got the Rinauro Armstrong legacy is almost Hatfield and McCoy at this point. But yeah, Bullet Bob loved working with me because I never hurt him. I let him be Bullet Bob, and I knew how to play off that, and I knew how to sell for him, and he loved it. I mean, but he was an old hard man that, when he shook your hand, you knew you were shaking Bullet Bob Armstrong's hand. I mean, it was just a tough, tough old dude. I mean, but just a joy to be around. Um, and he's one of those guys that he's what I try to preach to the kids now. Like, I could work Bullet Bob five nights a week and do it again on a sixth.
That's so cool.
Right? I mean, they were good matches. The crowds were into them. The people cared, and we could both walk to the pay window when it was done.
And that's what you want. That's the magic, right?
That's the that's the best part.
All right. Before we get to the last question, I just want to throw this thing at you, because completely unprompted, but I saw the name in that we would eventually talk about. We didn't get to this time. We briefly talked about him during the Jimmy Rave discussion in the past. CM Punk. If you had to give a prediction for CM Punk's future, I'm just going to throw it at you right now. It could be good, whatever you think. Just a random prediction.
Honestly, my prediction is I hope he's happy. If he finds happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I love Punk. I don't know if I've told this story. If I have, you could cut me off. When I first started getting my buzz on the indie scene in 04, Punk and Jimmy were really close. They were really, really close. And so by proxy, Punk and I became friends. And Punk was always very open to giving me critiques, which I appreciated because I mean, this is the guy. Like, there was no doubt when he walked into a room, like, oh, that's going to be the guy one day, right? Like, you just knew. Uh, and so Punk was always like, hey, if you want to send me something, I'll watch it. So I did. And he'd give me critiques, and I'd send him something else, and he'd watch it. He'd give me critiques. And this went on through his whole indie run. And then he gets signed and goes to OVW. Send me stuff. So I did. And he'd give me critiques. And then he gets called up to the main roster. And I send him stuff and he gives me critiques.
Wow.
And I mean, this goes on from '04 to, whenever. And finally, one day, I'm like, hey, man, what do I owe you? Like, let me buy you a video game or buy you dinner or, whatever, man. Like, you've done a lot for me, totally unprompted. And he said, oh, the only thing you can do for me is pay it forward.
That's awesome.
And I've always, like, that's one of the reasons why, like, I love the position I'm in with the NWA is because I'm getting to pay it forward. Right? Like, I took those words straight to heart. So where he ends up, who knows? But I hope he's happy. I genuinely hope wherever he lands in a happy place because he deserves it.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, I don't know, because I started doing this a while ago. I don't know if I did it with you because I know that we have a million more, but I love to ask this question to wrap things up. And I like to ask it every single time, no matter how many interviews we do, because to me, the answer can change. What does the future look like for Sal Rinauro?
Oh, man. Looks like a lot of business suits and papers. A lot of ink pens behind the ear. No, I still got a lot of things on the bucket list that I have to accomplish, and I'm hard-headed. And by hard-headed means I'm stupid. So I kind of just going to keep going until I literally can't. Like we touched on here, I'd love to be a part of the ECW Super 8. I'd love to go to Japan. My number one bucket list, without a shadow of a doubt, is the NWA World Junior title. It's just for a multitude of reasons. It's one of those things that, like, I'd love to bring that home to my children so they can see it. I can, because I tell them all the time, life isn't going to work at the pace you want it to work, but if you put in the work, it will happen. And it's just one of those things where I'd love to put that in their hands and see. I swear this old man kind of knows what he's talking about sometimes. I know most of the time I don't know what I'm talking about, but
And the beauty behind that is one of the first things you told me was your goal was to win the WCW Cruiserweight title, and WCW was born
absolutely
out of the NWA. So
yes. And then also that was Jimmy was a two-time NWA World Junior Champ, and it's just one last thing I can do with my best friend.
Cool.
So, and plus I'm the best wrestler in the world. I should at least have the junior title to prove it. But yeah, no, I mean, it would really mean the world to me to get involved in the NWA World Junior title mix. And Colby Carino has it now, and he's one of those guys that, like, I've got to help a lot. And I love him to death. I love Colby, and after his match at 75, when he finally won the title, I got to stop him, and we had a moment that is one of those things that will probably sit with me forever, where we didn't even have to speak. We just, I kind of just hugged him, and I was so proud of where he's come from and what he's been able to turn his life into. And he probably more so than most in the company knows what the World Junior title means to me, because he knew Jimmy too. And so it was just a beautiful moment. And I would love to ruin it by beating him for it.
Well, let's put it out in the
Yeah,
universe. Let's make it happen.
yeah, no, yeah, no. I'm trying to do all I can to make this happen. But like I said, I'm going to keep going until I can't. So there's a lot of spandex in my future, a lot of tassels in my future, and then a lot of business suits and pens and rolled up papers, and hopefully, a lot of teaching. Like I said, I love the position I'm in. I love getting to help the next generation of wrestler come along and learn from the mistakes I made without having to make them. And there's so, I mean, like, there's such a good crop of young talent in the NWA, like both on the male and the female side. Like I get along really well with the pretty empowered girls, Kenzie
They're great.
and Kylie and Ella. I love working with them, and I love that they're finding their characters. I love getting to help form their characters, and I've never been the prettiest girl in the room, but I have ideas of what the prettiest girl would be or could do. And so I love bouncing those ideas off them just to see, how they take it or what they can do with it. I think there's a lot of guys guys and girls uh, in the locker room that are going to be mainstays on television for a long time, and uh, hopefully I can help get them there. So like I think my future looks a lot like the stars you're going to be seeing on TV in 10 years.
It's awesome. One more time, let people know where to hit you up and how to support you.
You can find me at Sal Rinauro on Twitter. You can find me at Sal_Rinauro on Instagram because I messed up the first account. Uh, Again, technology, not my friend. You can find me at prowrestlingtees.com/Sal Rinauro. And you can find me on angrylemonade.net. Just click on the link there and you'll see this fresh new DMX eccentric shirt that I'm really proud of, that I actually had to get doused in fake blood in front of my buddy's house.
Amazing. Amazing.
And just as pro wrestling as it gets, it's Father's Day weekend. I'm the only place we could set up the green screen is outside in front of his house. My buddy lives next door to his father. Uh, so I'm outside covered in fake blood in my tights, taking pictures. And my buddy's dad just walks up and goes, "Yep, kind of what I expected," and turned around and walked back to his house.
Incredible.
So
Yeah, guys, we'll have links to all of that in the description of every video. Please be sure to show some support. Buy a t-shirt, follow them, support the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, too.
Please.
We'll have them linked as well. I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube, you probably follow the NWAs, and so many of our guests have been either with the NWA now or in the past, but, support them as well. And
6:05 every Tuesday, new episode of Power.
Absolutely. And for that matter, hey guys, follow us too at Twitter at Armbars Sidebar, on Instagram at Armbars and Sidebars. We're also on Threads, although we don't use it, at Armbars and Sidebars. And subscribe to us on YouTube at Armbars and Sidebars. We're moving up slowly but surely, and I appreciate all the support. Leave a comment. I always try to respond to comments as long as it's nothing hateful. If you say something hateful, we're just going to ignore you or delete it. But other than that, just be a good person, support wrestling, support Sal, support the NWA. Sal, amazing as always. You're a delight. Thank you so much for everything. From the comedy to the heartfelt, this had everything. Thank you. And until next time, guys, later.